Okay, this is going to be a size 16 pheasant tail. I'm going to go ahead and start with the tail material here, and I don't measure my tails before I tie them on. I just kind of throw them on there and then pull it through after, which I think gets the fibers on top of the hook a little bit better and allows you to have a perfect measurement essentially every time. So when I'm done with that, on my way back up to save on bulk, I'm going to get my extra small wire in here, and I'm going to wrap that all the way into the front. And what I try to do with these, I try to make them kind of slender, kind of slim, so I do kind of, mind the thread bulk a little bit, so I make every wrap count. So now that that's in, I'm going to kind of work my way back down, and just before I get to the base of the tail, I'm going to want to tie in my body fibers, and I tie those in tips first. That way you get that nice taper as you go up. See how they're kind of thin right at the tip there? So I'll get those tied in. You're not really going to add any bulk with the, with the thin part of the tip. So we'll get that wrapped up all the way up to the front. And I'm going to flip those over and get that wrapped around the shank. You can kind of see where I stop. I like a little bit of a bigger thorax than a lot of other tires, so I do leave a little bit more room up front. So I'm going to get this all the way up to where my thread is. And you'll see, even though I stop there, when I do my wing case, you'll see that I actually back my thread right up over the top of those fibers. Because again, I like a little bit of a bigger thorax, and I like that wing case to be really, really prominent. Now, I don't always counter wrap my wire, especially not when I'm using dubbing, but with pheasant tail, I do counter wrap all of my wire just because there's individual strands, and if you don't counter wrap it, sometimes that wire can slip right in between the strands and kind of defeat the purpose a little bit. So there is my body and my tail. So I'll just helicopter that off of there. Next is the thorax, which is just, about 7 or 8 pieces of pheasant tail. I'm going to cut off the ends and get those squared off and tie that right in. And once I get the front tied in, I'm going to hold that upright to make sure that they sit on top. And you can see how I put my thread over the top of my body, just 1 or 2 wraps at the most. And my dubbing that I'm using is brown possum that I'm going to tease out a little bit after I get that wound in. The legs of this are going to be just a nice piece of partridge. I like to try to find partridge pieces that have pretty dense fibers, and I notch out the inside of it and create 2 little angles like that. And I'm just going to kind of sit them right on top there and just grab them with my fingers when it's exactly where I want it. And then I'm just going to go nuts and capture it and make sure that that doesn't go anywhere. There's always going to be a little bit on the top of the thread sticking out after you cut it, so those legs aren't going to go anywhere. Get that out of there. Careful not to cut the legs, and then just kind of fold the wing case up over the top. Cinch that down, and I like to have a clean finish and a clean head, so you can see the thread wrapping in the thread, the wing case there. So after I get this snipped off, and I use a razor blade instead of scissors because scissors are always going to leave a little too much sticking out. So I'm going to put a little bit of dubbing on there. I'm going to fill in that little gap in the head. And then when I do my whip finish, that thread will disappear right down underneath that dubbing. You won't even see it. And we'll be good to go here. And that is my size 16 pheasant tail. They can be tied a lot of different ways, but that's how I do mine in pretty much any size.